one of the leading indicators is the fact that there is a Tu B'Shvat. A Tu B'Shvat. The 15th day of Shvat is called Tu B'Shvat, the holiday of planting of trees, etc. Planting of trees. So what does that have to do with Mashiach? Furthermore, is it because of the 15th day of the month? And we know that the 15th day of the month means, because when we observe the moon on the 15th day of the month, it's in total enlightenment. And since we are influenced via the channel called the moon, therefore we do Kiddush HaChodesh, we do Rosh Chodesh, Mivochem HaChodesh, we do all of these different aspects concerning a new month, is because ultimately on the 15th day, whereas the moon began on the first day with just a little flicker of light, when it reaches the 15th day of the month, and that's why the 15th day of any month is superb, because the physical expression leads us to believe that what is happening, a tree of life connection. What is the tree of life connection? Well, we can bring this physical universe called Malchut and bring it into a connection with the sun, because that is what's expressed on the 15th day of the month. Full moon. What does it mean, full moon? Now the sun is not blocked by earth. It's now in full bloom, because there is a connection, in a total connection between the sun and the moon. That's why the 15th day is always a good day. However, that 15th day appears in every month of the lunar month. What's so special that this day, called Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of Shvat, is designated as something special? But because it's something special, and how do we know it's something special? Because we know that in a 180-degree turn, what the 15th day of Shvat meets up with is the 15th day of Leo, Av. Exactly 6 months apart. And the Ari goes on into a lengthy explanation. What's so special about the 15th day of Av? And what's so special about the 15th day of Shvat? He says, very simple. On the 15th day of Av, and I hope most of you are, because I can't go into the full discussion of it, the 15th day of Av was the happiest day for union. In other words, if someone wants to get married and he could wait until the 15th day of Av, that is the most perfect day of the year for marriage, says the Talmud as well as the Zohar. 15th day. You have the 15th day, which we just explained, sun and moon, which represents Zeir Anpin and Malchut, two terms, two code names of the upper realm with the lower realm. Sun is considered a representative of the upper realm because that is the life-giving force. That's the Eitz HaChaim of the whole world. Without sun, forget it. There's no life. Without the sun, there's no life. And here, without going into a lengthy detail, what the sun is about. The sun heals. The sun is the healing power of the universe. And on the 15th day of Av, there is a complete union between these two. But without explaining why Av, I just want to explain why the 15th day of Shvat is significant for us. But these 2 days, seeming to be in an opposite conjunction, just the opposite ends of the circle, they have this in common. They have this in common. They influence each other. And therefore, these 2 days were designated as specific important days of joy. Specific days of joy. Now, why are they specific days of joy? As I asked before, because every month has a 15th day. But when the Talmud and the Zohar designated these 2 days as something very special, they were talking about the special influence of the sun. That on this day, the sun, which has ultraviolet rays and many other things that we consider to be detrimental to our health, on the 15th day, the sun only expresses, as Zerampin, only expresses positivity, because then it is totally under the influence of the tree of life dimension, and therefore that day there is no, the moon becomes totally subjective, it's totally in union with the tree of life realm, and therefore the 15th day of Av has this special dimension that the sun completely envelops. What does it mean, completely envelop, as opposed to other 15th days of other months? That here, Malchut, which is the tree of knowledge realm, does not exercise any semblance of Ra. So when someone gets married that day, he's at least beginning, or he starts a business even that day, he's starting off without a flaw. Now, if he doesn't measure up to the standards of what he began with, and he deteriorates in morals or otherwise, of course, then he'll lose that capacity. But by beginning off without a flaw is what creates the importance. And since it's the month of Leo is the sun, therefore that month and not another month, was designated as the day of joy, because the sun rules that month. And that's the month that the sun can exercise the kind of influence which nullifies, cancels out any form of negativity connected with the moon realm, which is the realm of the tree of knowledge. Going back now to this month, something special. According to Hillel in the Talmud, on the 15th day of the month of Shevat, of Aquarius, of Dali, on this month, the trees are judged. There are 4 days of judgment. Everyone is familiar with the day of judgment for the human being. But there are 4 kingdoms in this world. There is man. The lower kingdom of man is animal. Below that kingdom is what? The vegetable kingdom. And then the inanimate kingdom. And there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. The Rosh Hashanah that we're familiar with, or most of the people are familiar with, is the one that occurs in the month of Libra, or around September, sometimes the beginning of October, what we refer to as Rosh Hashanah. But there is another Rosh Hashanah. That is the Rosh Hashanah of the tree. What is the characteristic of a tree? Before we answer that, because that is one of our clues, one of the other highlights of the month of Aquarius is depicting a man with an urn or a cod, a pitcher, spilling water. Now, what does that mean for us? First of all, why the urn? Read all the astrology books in the world. No one asked that question. No one. And if you don't have that information, forget it. You didn't connect to the month of Mashiach. You didn't. Because you don't know. You don't even know why. And if you don't know why, as I said before, that lacks in your connection with the light force. In Hebrew, the word is kad, for picture. Kav Dalet, another clue. Another clue. What is 24? 24 is coded in the Torah. 24 is coded in the Torah, but no one will take any mention of it without the Zohar. And the Zohar, in fact, quotes when I said with the idea by Pinchas, says Pinchas, at the time there were sexual orgies going on because of a whole story that you can refer to in Pashat, just before Pashat Pinchas. How many people died in the plague? A plague, it says. How many people died in that plague? Because of illicit sexual orgies that were going on. How many people? 24,000. Now, would it have made any difference to us if it was 23,999? Or, as most people will say, it's a round figure. A round figure. It may have been 23,999, or it may have been 24,001 or 100. But we know otherwise. From the Zohar and the Ari, we know that the word 24 is din. Din means harsh judgment. How many students of Rabbi Akiva died? 24,000. You mean he had exactly 24,000 students? Not 23,999? Oh, round figure. A round figure. Are you implying with that idea of round figure that the Torah is not such an accurate instrument? Then you really don't believe that the Torah is our source of information concerning the whole world. Then you deny the validity of the Torah when you can say maybe it didn't mean exactly 24,000. 24. And 24 in many other places. And the Ari explains why 24 is called judgment. 24. Kad. To indicate to us that this month, as in the age of Aquarius, like the Zohar says, there'll be such unusual bloodshed as we have experienced in this age of Aquarius, bloodshed that we never could have dreamed of. Bloodshed of Jews, and then, of course, with the rest of the world. When the Jew suffers, if he suffers 6 million lives, then the non-Jewish world suffers much more, some say 20 million, some say 50 million, whatever the number is. But the world at large suffers always more than the Jew himself. Somehow we have a knack of dramatizing our losses, and we think we invoke the pity of our neighbors around us, and how soon they forget anyway. As we forget. As we forget, they forget. So that doesn't resolve anything. There has been one massacre after another, just a few years, respite in between and so forth. Because that is the age of Aquarius. The age of bloodshed. That picture indicates that. But what does it also indicate? What does it also indicate? That this month is also water. Now we know the opposite of din, which is gvura, which is left column. This picture also indicates that this is the month of abundance of water. That the water can emerge from the pitcher. That this pitcher can shed mercy, or, what it indicates, bloodshed. So now we have two aspects in this month. And then we have a third aspect. third aspect, the tree. What is the tree? The tree is connected to what we call the central column. The tree of the tetragrammaton is the vav. That's why it grows like a vav. It grows as a vav. That's why man and the tree have one thing in common. Not only that we all grow as a tree, but more important, says the Zohar, which I will shortly read for you. And only from the Zohar can I pass and share this information with you, because if he didn't say it, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know where it comes from. This month also is known as the month of central column or restriction. There are two things in this world beside a mayan, a well of water, goes against the natural tendency of gravity. A tree should not grow up. Why doesn't gravity keep it down? Like if we fell off a one-story building, we would go down because there's a force of gravity. How come that force of gravity does not affect the tree? Why does it grow up? Never thought about it. That's true. Well, how come it grows? Why shouldn't the force of gravity contain it? Stay right there at the level of the earth. Why does it grow up to who knows what kind of heights? Man, the same way. Only maybe after one gets old, he starts bending over. But some say because of old age. Zohar says not because of old age. Because it doesn't happen to everybody who's old age. If old age means you have to bend over, then everybody should bend over after a certain age. Not everybody bends over after a certain age. What does it indicate? It goes against gravity, which in Kabbalistic terminology means desire to receive. Desire to receive. The tree has that capability. So what? And as well as man, as we shall shortly come to a demonstration of the power of man. The tree, and why Tu B'Shvat is so important, is because it is the only month that contains, like the atom, all three factors, all three elemental factors referred to as right column, left column, central column. That produces a force, the force of God. This month, and the only reason why this month is called the month of Rosh Hashanah of the tree, is because this month the tree is instilled with the force of resisting and going against the force of the desire to receive of earth. We know that the common denominator of those connected with the realm of the tree of knowledge are those who are into greed. If you're into greed, you're connected completely with the tree of knowledge. So while things will be good, as it says, good and evil, but you must suffer the consequences of evil. And we could always blame God for it, but the Zohar wants to indicate to us that we are responsible. If we do not connect, it is because we lack these three ingredients. These three ingredients. That's the tree. So in other words, we learn that there is something special about this month. It contains, as the Zohar says, the three columns. Hainu im Zeir Anpin. The Vav is Zeir Anpin. For those of you who have learned a little Kabbalah, the Vav is Zeir Anpin. shenikra Eitz HaChayim shebegan Eden. V'korei klas zmanim, hainu shemekabelet menu gimel hakavim. Because in this month, we have three columns, right, left, and central. Hamechunim gimel zmanim. Now, in Hebrew, the month is called Shevat. Where did that come from? You mean you had to give the baby a name, so you call it Shevat. Why didn't you call it baby? Call it candy. Why do you call it whatever you call it? Shevat, says the Zohar, is from the word shavita, yizdakev. Hu Shevat hadin, that this month, says the Zohar, is like the Shavit, the comet. Although nobody knows what a comet is about. But Shevat comes from the idea of Sharvit. It's a star. It's a comet. And I explain. Nobody knows what a comet is. It has a long tail. But if you read, that would take me too long to explain, but if you read the time zones, I explain that. Comet has a tail, that's a significant. But did you hear anybody say, why it's got a tail? Yeah, you listen to a couple of scientists, they'll tell you about the gases and this and that and the other, as if they had been there. Right? They're so sure about it, but it's not so. V'shadvita hu shvat hadin, shebetchilat hazivug, in the beginning of the connection, zivug means intercourse or connection, hu mizdakef umoshel. In the beginning, he, the kad, the pitcher, which is indicative of din, judgment. In other words, when we talk about judgment, that there are no room for saying, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. You've done something wrong, judgment. Judgment. In this month, you do something wrong, judgment. Ukruza kare bechol lechon aminin hormanad deberuriye. Says the Zohar, Hainu soda katuv re'ei netati uvachata b'chayim. I have given you life, choose life, as if it's up to us. I mean, isn't it lucky or unlucky? Isn't it the fate of God, the decree of God? Got to be bad, got to be bad. The Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says, uvachata b'chayim. You can choose life. What is life? With the Heyarat HaZivug mitgale ha'or v'hanom hanova mikavam tzei she'isod chetz ha'chayim. The Shavit, the comet, is representative of central column. Central column. It balances everything in the world. And when you have balance, you have everything. If there is balance, when you have, that's Eitz HaChayim. You have balance, and therefore it's called Eitz HaChayim. Nothing is over and nothing is less. And therefore, this month was called Shevat, which was a clue and a code name for Shavit. And Shavit, we know what Shavit means. It is that comet, referred to as a comet, which contains the three forces. The three forces in a harmonious, in a balanced state. In a balanced state. Like the atom. It is only when you split the atom that you create havoc. When you split the atom, why is there havoc? Why is there waste, destruction, and the whole world is worried about nuclear? It came about by a Jew who was a channel for fragmentation in the world. Because we either bring fragmentation to the world, or we can bring light to the world. And we are responsible. And there is a Jewish conspiracy. If we do not bring light to the rest of the world, they are right in their condemnation of the Jew, because we are not furnishing, and only we can furnish that kind of light. Therefore, it's called the month of Shavit. That is Mashiach, meaning, while collective Mashiach has not made its appearance, but each individual, while everything crumbles around him, he can be a singular beacon of light for himself, and maybe those around him. But it is totally dependent on our activity. If there is an excess of greed, no good. You're back into the tree of knowledge. Excess of sharing, also not balanced. So how do we balance things? The only way you balance things is by absorbing the power of the central column, power of restriction. Another aspect, as you know, that the tzaddik and the bet are responsible for the creation, according to Avram Avinu, in his book of formation. Tzaddik bet, right there, which are the two letters for the control of this month, meaning tapping the positive energy and controlling the negative energy. Says Avram Avinu, the tzaddik is for Aquarius, and the bet is for Saturn. Tzaddik bet is 92. Very significant. Very significant. Another clue what this month is about. The word Amen. Amen. Pronounced by all peoples in the whole world. Ask one Jew, what does it mean? What does it mean? He'll give you Keil Melech, Neman, other things, but it doesn't tell you what it tells you. God is the king, and he's truthful. I don't know who thought God wasn't so truthful. But anyway, we need a declaration. Says the Zohar, the Amen has nothing to do with being truthful. It is only a code word. And that is not a blessing. When we answer Amen after a blessing, it has nothing to do with blessings, which is usually when the word Amen is recited. Or when we wish to say, well, let's hope from here on in, where we shall never know of any sorrows, and everyone says, Amen. What is it doing? Nobody knows. And because we don't know, it hasn't helped. What does Amen mean? Amen is 91. How did we arrive at 91? The same reason as there are 91 days between each season. Oh, how wonderful. 91 days. Why 91 days? If you don't learn Kabbalah, you don't ask those questions. We are so robotic that we accept the facts of life without questioning. And if you do not question, you have never and can never achieve control. It is what we have been discussing about on the 15th day. The sun, Zeir Anpin, is represented by the channeling to connect with God of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the highest form of revelation of God's light. Adonai, you see it's interspaced Yud Aleph, Daled Nun Yud. See, that's in another color. You have the Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's a tetragrammaton. Then you have the Aleph Daled Nun Yud. When these are fused together, it is what we considered on the 15th day of the month, the sun and the moon, meaning the world of Eitz HaChaim now rules. The world of Eitz HaChaim now rules over this world, which is good and evil. No good and evil. No good and evil. It's only the world of good. And it adds up to 91. The tetragrammaton, which is the symbol of the tree of life dimension, and the Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which refers to, according to the Zohar, to our dimension of the tree of knowledge dimension, when they are fused together, you have that beautiful combination of where Ze'er Anpin, the sun, or the Tetragrammaton, rules over the Adnai, over this world. Now it's 92. Why is it 92? Because without man's intervention, nothing will happen. If things go bad, man's intervention. Things go good, man's intervention. To exercise control, bringing these two factors together, can only come about by that extra dimension called man. That one extra ingredient. What is man? Like the tree. He has the power of balancing the central column. And just as the tree has that dimension on the 15th day, why is it called, or why do we refer to it as such a beautiful holiday? It's not even taken advantage anymore, unless you want to plant a tree in Israel. That's the extent of what Tu B'Shvat means. But it means on that particular day, as well as all the rest of the month, but on that particular day, the full revealment of the force, which is right through the month, because the Tzaddik Bet refers to this whole month, according to Avraham Avinu, of the idea. And where else do we see in the why is it Tzaddik? Aquarius. According to the Zohar, the power of the Aleph Bet, it goes into greater detail. Tzaddik. Now you notice some say it's the Sephardic Tzaddik. We say it's Rabbi Shimon's Tzaddik. Why do I have to stop at Spain? I can go all the way back, right, to Avraham Avinu. When he explains that the Tzaddik, you will notice you have an inverted Yud, and a Nun. It's made up of two letters. Oh, okay. This makes it clearer. All right. The Yud and the Nun. What does it mean, Yud and Nun? The Nun indicates poorness. Poorness. That's why in the Ashrei, the prayer of Ashrei that David created in his book of Psalms, you have the Ashrei according to the Aleph Bet, but you do not have a Nun. He did not want to insert the word Nun because it is the root of falling. Nefilah. Nefilah. The Nun indicates falling. And therefore King David omitted the Nun in the prayer. If most of the people don't even know that there's an Aleph Bet in that prayer. That's what's so significant about that prayer. But that the Nun is omitted. Why is the Nun omitted? Because it means dal. Means dal. Poorness. The Yud, if we invert it, this is until Mashiach comes, he says. The Zohar. Till Mashiach comes, in the power of the Aleph Bet, there's a complete explanation of what I'm saying. The Yud faces that way. Now there are Sefer Torahs, and and as the Ari says, even though it's not written according to the Kabbalistic method, or as you might say, the Sephardic, but if it's an Ashkenazi Sefer Torah, the Yud faces inwards. But the Yud is reversed, and it faces towards the Nun. According to Rabbi Shimon, who was there long before the Ashkenazi and before the Sephardi, because Syrians, Iraqis, and Persians are called Sephardim, but they were there long before the country of Spain came into existence. Why do you call them Sephardi? But I explain that also in the book. Because the only way, says Rabbi Shimon, when that Yud will be reverse facing the Nun, is when Mashiach comes. But we have the power to invert individually. If we understand that we exercise restriction and all of the other components of what this month is about, is that meanwhile, it is called the month in Hebrew, Dali. Dali has nothing to do, supposedly, with Aquarius. Nothing to do with Aquarius. Where did this month come from? Dali. Where did the name come from? Just as we said before, the word Shevat comes from Shavit, because it's a stabilizer, and that's what Mashiach means. The word Dali comes from Dal Yud. Dal Yud. We have been given these two components. Dal, which means Nun, the Filah, the aspect of Malchut. Like the moon has no light of its own, we have no light of its own. Only the light that we can bring down from the Yud. And therefore, generally speaking, until Mashiach, but that means collective Mashiach. Individually Mashiach, we have the power. That's why it's 92. To indicate that we have the power to make it Amen, to make Mashiach the connection between this world and the world of Etz HaChaim. And therefore it's 92. And therefore it includes the tzaddik. And what is the bet? If you read the Power of the Aleph, you will know that the world was created by the bet. What does it mean the world was created by the bet? Bereshit begins with a large bet. Why? Because the bet means bracha. Means blessing. Now, if we can invert this month of bloodshed into one, not of Dali, but invert the Yud, like the water, pouring out the water, and taking advantage of this month's Rosh Hashanah Lilanot, the new year of the trees, which means what? The injection each year. The trees would never grow this way if it did not on Tu B'Shvat receive an injection of going against gravity, going against greed. We would all be greedy. So it says in Noach, Ki yetzer lev adam ra menu rav. We are evil from the day we were born. How do you change it? Now, if you're evil, then you have to suffer the consequences. But we have the opportunity. The opportunity is at Tu B'Shvat when there is an infusion of central column. And that is the only reason the tree grows up against the force of gravity. Goes up. Why does it go up? To indicate that there is a restriction, power inserted that creates balance, creates the Vav, creates the Yud, not from not nourishing, as unfortunately the world appears in that form of chaos, because the Yud does not furnish the Nun, but that we can turn that Yud around. And we can make this month be the month of Mashiach, if not collectively, at least individually.